So today's movie, my friend, is absolutely epic. It's all about martial arts, secret techniques, and a super-strong warrior who defeats the village chief's son and protects the entire village from destruction. What's the full story? Well, that's what we'll dive into in today's video. Our movie kicks off with a guy named Floriyumi running while a group of people on horses chase him. Weirdly, Floriyumi has a smile on his face. Why's that? Flashback time. We jump back to his childhood, where we see him, as usual, running from a group of kids. He ends up at the market and bumps into this pregnant lady, who's quite big, but he keeps running. Finally, he reaches the martial arts club where the kids are training and fighting fiercely. Everyone's trying to win to impress the master, who also happens to be Floriyumi's uncle. Floriyumi asks his uncle if he can join the martial arts training like the other boys, and this is where his passion for fighting kicks off because the chief's son always bullied him. But his uncle refuses, worried about his dad's reaction because his dad wants him to stay out of trouble and be a good boy. But as we all know, being the nice guy doesn't work out in this world. Floriyumi keeps begging his uncle, asking him to just test his skills. Eventually, the uncle gives in and agrees, even though he hasn't seen what Floriyumi can do. But suddenly a priest shows up and takes Floriyumi to the temple for a ritual. The priest tells his dad about how Floriyumi really wants to learn martial arts and keeps getting into fights with the chief's son, which is causing him more problems. The priest reassures his dad that Floriyumi is a smart kid and that it's normal for boys to get into fights. It's part of learning how to defend themselves. After leaving the temple, the other kids start bullying Floriyumi again. They throw food at him and he tries to fight back but fails. They throw him to the ground, laughing at him. This moment makes Floriyumi decide he won't rely on anyone to teach him. He's going to train himself. And that's exactly what he does. He starts practicing every day with whatever he can find, trees, fruits, anything. He keeps training hard on his own. One day, the boys bully him again, but this time, Floriyumi is ready. He punches the chief's son right in the face, knocking him down. From that moment, the kids are terrified of him. Fast forward to the present, and we see Floriyumi running again, with a group of knights chasing him through the forest. But suddenly he vanishes into the trees and they can't find him. Their leader tells them to split up and not return until they've caught him. One by one, Floriyumi takes them down with his incredible skills. He grabs one of their horses and rides off, leaving them all defeated. When the chief's son, the same bully from his childhood, hears what happened, he's furious. He orders his men to hunt Floriyumi down, no matter what. Meanwhile, Floriyumi reaches a martial arts arena and as usual jumps right into training. He takes down everyone in his path with ease. Suddenly a new fighter steps in, pumped up and ready to challenge Floriyumi. The battle begins, and surprisingly, this guy manages to knock Floriyumi down. Floriyumi wakes up, confused, and sees an old beggar next to him. The beggar tells him, "You need more training to master the true secrets of martial arts." The old man takes Floriyumi under his wing and leads him to another martial arts school. They meet the leader of the school, who asks, "Who are you, and what's your story?" And that's where our journey really begins. Florim joins the fight, showing off his incredible skills and strength. When the master sees how talented he is, he agrees to let him train with the others. We also see the master's daughter, who, just like Florim, loves martial arts and is determined to learn, no matter what. One day, while Florim is training with the other men, the chief's son shows up, causing total chaos, flipping the place upside down to find Florim. His father ordered him to bring Florim back, and now they know he's there. But what they don't know is that Florim gave the master and fighters a fake name. The fighters tell the chief's son that they don't know anyone by that name, which angers him. He punishes everyone for hiding Florim and starts setting fire to the village houses without mercy. Florim quickly breaks free from his restraints, charges at the chief's son, and when the chief's son sees Florim's strength and bravery, he runs away as fast as he can. You know what they say? Sometimes running is the smart thing to do. After that, Florim explains to the villagers that he was the reason their homes were burned down. They accept his apology, as does the master. Florim gathers his belongings and leaves, worried that they'll come back and harm the village again. As he walks through the forest one night, a young man runs after him. The two walk together until they arrive at a theater where they watch martial arts performances. Florim is amazed by the fast moves and flips, and he's inspired to achieve the same skills. He meets the performer he admired, whose name is Lee, and tells him he wants to learn all the techniques he saw. Lee explains that the only way to do that is to become one of the performers. Florim agrees, but his real goal is to learn the martial arts skills they use in their shows. After the show, Florim convinces Lee to drink heavily with him, and eventually gets Lee to agree to teach him everything. The next day, we see the chief's son with his men harassing a group of girls, including the master's daughter, who Florim had met earlier. Florim shows up, fights them off, and saves the girls. The master's daughter thanks him and even gives him her ring as a token of appreciation. She asks him to keep it until they meet again. Florim continues his training and reaches a fighting arena where he meets another master named Jandi. Jandi tests Florim's skills by pitting him against one of his students in the ring. Florim easily defeats the student with just one punch. Impressed by his strength, Jandi accepts Florim into his camp and starts training him further. A few days later, Florim meets with the master's daughter, Lynn, and tries to return the ring, but she refuses, telling him it's not the right time to give it back. There's clearly a bigger story behind her. After a few days, a tournament takes place in the camp, and Florim defeats everyone he faces. The master is thrilled with Florim's progress and gives him a letter with the address of another camp, where he can train to improve his skills even further. Florim arrives at the new martial arts camp and is shocked to find that the master there is none other than the same old beggar who saved him before. The beggar teaches Florim new and different techniques, including weapon combat. Florim becomes close with his fellow students, but suddenly a masked warrior shows up. This fighter is revealed to be the brother of the village Tiam, and he leads a fierce battle against Florim and his men. One of Florim's comrades fights alongside him, taking on the chief's soldiers. But when Florim gets angry, he takes them down one by one. As usual, the masked warrior escapes when he sees the power Florim unleashes. Quickly, Florim picks up his friend and rides to the nearest village to get help. They finally reach the village, where one of the locals is skilled in healing and manages to help Florim's friend. When asked for his name, Florim replies, Shigli. He thanks the healer for saving his friend. Then Florim meets up with Lynn, the girl who gave him the ring earlier, and they walk together. She tells him that the village chief loves to see fighters compete and is organizing a martial arts tournament, and she wants him to join. Florim is pumped and ready to participate in the tournament. A few days later, the tournament begins, and Florim faces off against a fighter he had already beaten earlier in the movie. Turns out, this fighter is actually the masked warrior and the chief's brother, the same guy whose soldiers attacked them in the forest, injuring Florim's friend. The two engage in a fierce battle while the entire village watches. This time, Florim manages to win. Seeing what happened, the village chief sends in another fighter to take on Florim, but Florim takes him down as well. Suddenly, a group of people attacks the area and kills the village chief. Florim and Lin jump into the fight. But the shocking part is that the leader of the attackers is none other than Shigli, the guy who healed Florim's friend earlier. Florim is about to defeat Shigli but remembers how he saved his friend and decides not to kill him. He hands the weapon to Shigli, but Shigli grabs the gun, pulls the trigger, and is about to shoot Florim. Luckily, the gun is empty. Shigli then laughs, thinking he's won, and reveals that this was all a test from the day Florim saved Lin in the forest. He tells him, "I've been watching you since then." It turns out that Shigli is actually the real chief of the village, and the whole thing was just an act. Even the chief who died earlier gets up, revealing that he's one of Shigli's men. Shigli then tells Florim that he's now officially part of his army. Florim is furious, but Shigli challenges him to one final battle in front of the entire village. The winner's word will be law. If Florim wins, he'll be free, but if he loses, he'll join the army like a regular soldier. Florim agrees, and they fight. In the end, Florim loses and is forced to join the ranks of Shigli's soldiers. He becomes part of Shigli's army, fighting under his command. And that's where our movie ends for today, my friend. We've learned that life is full of wins and losses, but the most important thing is to give it your all and keep pushing forward.